to date, we have none other than Mitch Mathews, who is the founder of Anthem Pest Control, a pest control company based here in Orem, Utah. Mitch is also a former NFL player who played college football at BYU, where he is known for one of the most exciting plays in college football history with a last-second Hail Mary catch against Nebraska, which was legendary.
Thank you.
Mitch is not only a phenomenal entrepreneur, but a fantastic leader. In addition to Anthem, Mitch started a leadership group called the Young Entrepreneurs Club, which has a goal to inspire the next generation of entrepreneurs. So with that, welcome in, man.
Glad to be here.
I'm excited. Glad we could do it, man.
For sure.
Well, Mitch, first thing I typically ask my guests is talk a little bit about your upbringing and,
sure.
High school years or even younger than that, just kind of any sort of definitive moments or how you were raised that would help us understand who you are today, man.
Yeah. So I had a fantastic upbringing, incredible parents, incredible mom and dad, a great older brother that sort of paved the way for me in sports. He was the man-child kid, that had like armpit hair as like an 8th grader. And so he got a scholarship to BYU as a sophomore in high school, just a freak athlete. And so having his name on my back of the jersey really helped me, in sports. Great parents. My dad was always my coach. My mom was a freak athlete, marathoner, 6-pack, had an amazing family. And so as a dad, I get nervous. I'm like, I had 2 little girls now. I get nervous. I'm like, how do I replicate exactly what I got as a kid for my kids? And it's going to make it a lot easier because I had parents that did a fantastic job. My mom's no longer with us. She passed away right after when I was 25.
I'm sorry about that.
My dad's still here. He lives with me, which is amazing. And I had fantastic parents and amazing upbringings, especially sports. That was really just everything, For me, school was always secondary. My brother, he was always school just as important as sports. He was a 4.0 student, got his doctorate in anesthesiology. And that's what he does now. But for me, it was always just sports, and it was always just friends. Sports and friends is all that mattered. When I came to college, my last 2 years at BYU, I don't think I went to class like one time. But it was literally just sports because the ball stops rolling for everybody. And so it's just sports and just people. When I say people, I mean just friendships. That's probably my number one skill is creating friends and keeping friends. And so that's sort of how business turned out for me. Was I love people, love working with people. And so let's ride the sports thing out as long as we can and then jump into business afterwards. But as a kid, man, it was all sports. Loved where I grew up in Portland, Oregon. And then now I'm here in Lehigh, Utah.
Yeah, man, that's great. Well, so how you obviously played football in high school. Did you play other sports as well?
Yeah, baseball.
Okay. Baseball.
People always think I play basketball because of my height and my build.
Sure.
But it was just football and baseball.
Yeah. What did you play on for a position on baseball?
I was left-handed, so pitcher and first base.
Okay. Yeah, same. So I played at Alta High School here in San Diego.
Did you? That's where my wife went to school.
Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
She's probably 2 years younger than you.
There you go.
Yeah.
Nice, man. Cool. That's great. So yeah, tell us about that recruiting experience. I mean, when you were junior, senior, high school, what was that process like as you were thinking about college football?
Yeah. So growing up in Oregon, I always wanted to be an Oregon Duck. I mean, who didn't? Like, what high school kid didn't want to have all the Nike swag, all of that? It was insane. Like, everyone was an Oregon Duck fan.
Yep.
And that's what I was too, for sure. And so I went to all the camps, the Oregon State, Washington State camps, and I got a lot of attention. But Oregon was heavily recruiting the Florida kids, the California kids. And so that young kid from Oregon who wanted to go to Oregon, they typically wanted you to walk on. But I would go to their camps and I would go crazy. And they just still wanted me to be that walk-on guy. And my dad played college football at Southern Utah. One of his best friends was actually coaching at BYU. And my dad called him and said, you need to look at my son, Marcus, my older brother. And they did. And Marcus, my brother, was a freak, like I said. And he got a scholarship after his sophomore year. Super, super good athlete. But that was sort of our only connection to BYU. We never grew up watching BYU games, ever. We always watched the Ducks. But the second my brother got a scholarship to BYU, it was just all of a sudden an instant switch, all eyes on BYU. That's exactly where I want to go. Because who would have the chance to play, with their older brother in college? Not many people. So
right.
Since my freshman year of high school, it would turn into always wanting to go to BYU. And Oregon was always a cool option, but since my brother was going to BYU, that's sort of where I wanted to go. And since I had his name, he was very heavily recruited. Since I had his name, I got a lot of just easy, free eyeballs on me.
Sure.
And even though I felt like I had good tape, there was no huddle back then. You were still sending out DVDs, you know? And so I sent all these DVDs out to coaches to get recruited, and it didn't really happen. I got more attention, but I didn't get that scholarship, you know? So for me, it always took going in person in the summer to these camps. So I came to UNLV's camp and got a scholarship right after because they were able to watch me in person. And then I went to BYU's camp and did really, really well against their guys that were already on scholarship. And then got a scholarship the second camp ended, like 5 minutes later, you know?
Nice.
So it took for me still believing in myself, even after the coaches saw my tape and said, nah, I'm not sure. It said, no, I'm going to fly to Utah, or I'm going to fly to Vegas. I'm going to fly to wherever and show these people in person how good I really am. And that's what it took. And I got a scholarship to BYU, played there from 2012 to 2015, had a great career there. And that was the process, was having a great brother before me and then showing up, you know, in person and saying, look, I'm going to ball out today. And I did.
Yeah, there's something to be said about that. I mean, the persistence and just determination, you know, maybe getting some looks from your brother's name, but just flying out and doing it. Not everyone's willing to do that, man.
Yeah.
Get out in front of people.
My only 2 scholarships was right after I was with their, you know, I'm in front of all their scholarship players that were my age. So I was the odd one out that didn't have a scholarship yet. And it was called Junior Day. So all these juniors had scholarships, and the guys were like right on the cusp, who was me. I had to go show my skills against them, and then I got a scholarship right after. So, But yeah, it took a lot because the hometown teams didn't want to recruit me, and then I was a year after my brother in terms of a scholarship, right? It was after my junior year. Yeah. And so I had to still believe myself and tell myself I was somebody, and then show the guts to show face.
Yeah, love it, man. Well, how was your experience at BYU? I mean, you obviously had a great career there, but remind me, the quarterback. I know Mangum was the one who threw the Hail Mary in Nebraska, but who was the quarterback when you started off? And I don't know. Yeah, just tell us a little about your experience there at BYU.
Well, Tanner Mangum was my quarterback for that Hail Mary, but 5 minutes before then, Taysom Hill was the quarterback before he got hurt.
Okay, that's right. That's right.
So me and Taysom were always super close in college because all 4 years that I was there were the 4 years that he was there. But my freshman year, I wasn't a starter yet, but he was. And so we didn't really play together a ton. But then my sophomore year, I got injured. And then our junior year, he got injured. Then our senior year, he got injured. So him and I never really had a complete season together, but we always had some part of each of our 4 seasons together. But the whole entire offseason, Taysom and I got super close. We trained a lot together. Well, I can't say we really lifted together because he was always 3 times as strong as me, but we always threw together, worked out together. We played on the same softball team, played on the same intramural basketball team just to get close. But something always happened. One of us got hurt. So I had Riley Nelson was a quarterback my freshman year, and then Taysom was my sophomore year. Christian Stewart was my junior year after Taysom got hurt. And then Tanner Mangum was my senior year after Taysom got hurt the first game. But my experience at BYU was amazing. It was amazing. Like I had all the learning moments. I thought, like every player, I thought I should have been a starter the second I stepped on campus, but I wasn't. We had an All-American receiver, Cody Hoffman, that was there. That was fantastic to learn from. He was similar size to me, and so I was able to learn from him. And then I started a few games my sophomore year, and then my junior and senior year, I started every single game. And it was a great time. I had a lot of learning moments, a lot of chances to rebound from injury. We would have a NFL scout at almost every single one of our practices. And so showing out for them all the time was amazing. And then I was able to climb leaderboards in history at BYU, which felt really good. And I worked my tail off, man. That's where I really established myself, my confidence, my work ethic. That was at BYU because it's a dogfight to get that starting job. Even if you have that starting job at BYU, there's a lot of other starters out there that are really good too. And so are you the best at BYU only? Or are you the best in the Mountain West? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Are you the best in the Independent Conference? Are you the best in, west of the Mississippi? That was sort of the battle, is not to be a big fish in a small pond. And I think a lot of times people can suffer from that. They're maybe the best salesperson at their company, and so they get all this confidence just to go to a different company and realize they're number 50, right? Mm-hmm. And so for me, I always learned not to be a big fish in a small pond. And so competing against guys at Notre Dame, competing against guys at USC, that was my mindset, was, can I be the best in all the West? Can I be one of the best guys in the country? And so that was always my battle. And so BYU gave me the platform to excel, play well, and really be that featured guy. And it gave me a chance to, even play afterwards.
Yeah, I love it, man. Yeah, so then talking about that, what you mentioned the NFL scouts at practices. BYU, there's definitely been some great talent that's gone from BYU into the NFL, had tons of success. But how does the NFL view BYU as like a portal into the NFL? Like, what was that experience like talking with scouts and transitioning into that next step in the NFL?
I actually don't think everyone has a great view of BYU, every NFL team. And I don't know what it is. It could be because you're missionary guys. Yeah. You might be a little bit softer. Actually, I know for a fact that some coaches think that BYU guys are soft, which really? I think is absolutely not true. We're a very, very scrappy group of guys. You have to be, right?
Sure.
I remember when I was in Kansas City, so I went undrafted to Kansas City, and I knew or had a strong feeling that I was going to go undrafted because most teams in the NFL said, look, you're 25. Most of the rookies that are coming are going to be 22. Mm-hmm. So I've showed a mission. And they're like, look, the odds that we draft you over this guy who's the same age as you is slim. But you're going to have your chance to pick where you want to go. And I chose Kansas City over Green Bay. That was the sort of last two. And when I was in Kansas City, I was having a great, great start at the beginning of what's called OTAs. It's before training camp. It's what guys are doing right now, OTAs. So Jaren Hall, Puka Nacua, those guys are doing OTAs right now, all the new draft picks. I was in OTAs, and I had a really, really good start. I was very optimistic about what I was doing. And the assistant GM and the head trainer, oddly enough, they called me into their office. And they like, Mitch, shut the door. So I'm in the head trainer's office. The assistant GM, who's like even higher than the head coach, calls me into his office. And they're like, hey, Mitch, just want to tell you how good of a job you've been doing. We think you can play here for 4 or 5 years. Like, you've been doing really, really good. We just have one question for you. You're not soft, are you? And I'm like, no, sir. Like, absolutely not. I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, well, you're a BYU guy. And so I always see you in here stretching and, foam rolling your body out. I just want to make sure you're not soft. I'm like, no, sir, not at all. And I'm like where'd this even come from? And I had a good relationship with these guys. Like, look, we get some BYU guys and return missionary guys. We just don't think they have that chip on their shoulder. So we want to make sure that you do. I'm like, absolutely, I do. And so some teams have this, this preconceived notion that you might be softer because you served a mission, or you might be softer because you went to BYU.
Interesting.
Anyways, that lit a fire under me to definitely not be that way. So any chance I had to show them that I was not soft, I did. So I stopped coming in that training room, ever stretching, ever rolling out, ever getting massages. I did that off-site because I don't want them ever to even think that I was that guy.
Yeah.
But look, at the end of the day, like, I chose BYU. There's plenty of successful BYU guys in the NFL. You just have to prove yourself at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. Kansas City didn't actually, at the end of the day, give myself a chance to prove myself. There was 15 receivers. I was roommates with Tyreek Hill, who's one of the best receivers in the league. And so you can imagine, if I'm going up against him, how many shots they're going to give me in chances, right? And so I should have chose to go to Green Bay instead of Kansas City. That was one of the biggest mistakes I made. But you live and you learn, So the Chiefs released me and the Browns picked me up right away, and I was able to be on their practice squad later that year and have a lot of success as a practice squad guy there, and ended up hurting my hamstring with the Browns. And was able to rehab for a little bit, but they ended up releasing me as well. And then my second year was with the Vikings, then with the Dolphins, and ended up hurting my ankle with the Dolphins as well. Was out for 12 weeks. But it was sort of for me in the NFL, a little bit of a roller coaster. Going from very stable job at BYU as a starting guy, like the featured player, to the NFL, where like they couldn't even care less that you're there. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, they couldn't even care less.
Yeah.
Because you're undrafted, they don't know who you are. I'm getting legit 2 to 3 plays of practice. And those plays I'm getting in practice are like run plays. I'm blocking somebody.
Yeah.
So I'm so frustrated, They told me that's all part of it. But then when you get released, you're like, I didn't even have a chance to prove myself.
Yeah.
Then I went to the Browns, and I actually had a great chance to prove myself because I'm on the practice squad against their starters and their first team All-Pro players. And I was able to catch touchdowns and do really well. And even after they released me, they called me back and said, hey, we want you back, which is a big win, And I was going to go back to Cleveland to go play with the Browns. But I was like, screw you guys. You guys cut me when I was hurt. I'm going to go to Minnesota instead. just as a prideful young kid.
Yeah.
But that ended up being a massive mistake too, because if a team calls you back, that means they liked what they saw when they saw you in person.
Yeah.
And so just a lot of through injury and through choosing the wrong teams to go play with, it sort of felt like every time I went somewhere, I was sort of this new guy who hadn't proven himself. Mm-hmm. And the window to prove yourself is not like, you don't have 2 years. Like at BYU, you have a guaranteed 4 years to prove yourself. Mm-hmm. You can be average the first 3 years, your freshman, sophomore, and junior year, and then become a starter as a senior. In the NFL, you have 2 weeks to prove yourself. Jeez. If you don't, you're out, So a little bit different turnover cycle. But at the end of the day, even through injuries and choosing the wrong thing, and I was still able to live out my dream job for like 24 months, 2 years, and play against some great guys, make some great friends, have a lot of stories to tell, and still live out, my dream life.
That's great, man. When you were younger, or even at BYU, was it like sights set on the NFL, that's the end game? Or did it just kind of evolve as you progressed during your BYU career?
Yeah.
Like, is that a vision you had?
I think like a way out far-fetched dream was like play football in the NFL. Mm-hmm. But I didn't actually believe that I could until my sophomore year of college.
Got it.
That's when it switched.
Okay.
And it is switched because I think you need other people sometimes, not always, but sometimes, to tell you about your potential, because we have so many blinders on. If you're hearing what I'm saying right now, we can all probably think of a time where someone gave us some sort of compliment, gave us some sort of vision about who we could become, and we're like, whoa, I never knew that. I never thought I could. But you think I could play in the NFL? You think I can be this CEO or this you think I can? And your whole world just changes. And those are the people, when you're speaking on stage one day, you look back and say, man, I'm so glad my 8th grade coach said this to me. It just changed your life. And so I had coaches like that in college that were like, look, you have a chance to do this, to go play in the NFL. And it was sort of like this far out dream, this fleeting thought. And then I had coaches that said, look, if you keep playing how you're playing, you can be even a 1st or 3rd round pick. And so my swagger just went off the charts. I'm like, man, I can do this. Yeah. But it took somebody else, because all I was focused on was, all right, I wake up, I got to eat this breakfast, I got to go to practice, I got to watch this film. Like, it took someone else who had been there and done that before, former players that I'd meet with and talk with, coaches that would say, man, you got a shot at this. And so a lot of times in my life, it's taken other people to sort of plant this seed in my mind. And then I'm the one that grows that seed into what it can fully become. And so for me, it was coaches that said, look, you can do this. It was my older brother that said, look, you're legit. It was players that had gone to the NFL and said, look, if I can, you can. And before I knew it, it was like, this is now my new dream, to go. And it's a real tangible dream that I can go attain.
I love that, man. And I agree completely. I feel like still today I'll have people say, and you got your mom and dad who always, pump you up, but when it's somebody else, or you capture that vision of like looking from the outside in, and you really start to understand your true potential. And you're right. Sometimes it takes somebody just having your back and giving you that support. So I love that.
Yeah.
So what was it that you're in the NFL for 2 years? I guess, when did you decide, or how did you come to the decision like, hey, enough's enough, like 2 years kind of bounced around teams. Like, how did you decide to just transition away from the NFL?
Yeah. So actually, when I got cut by the Browns, my agent was like, look, you're a little bit older. You're sort of what they call old fruit in the NFL, right? They have new blood every year, right?
Yeah.
And so I have no idea if teams are going to call you back. And I remember hearing him tell me that and being like, what? Like a year ago, I was supposed to be like a guy, a very wanted guy. And now I'm like old fruit and I might not get picked up. This was strange. And so I remember, my whole life, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, always knew that I would be. And I love entrepreneurship just as much as I love football. And a lot of people don't love their afterlife after football. It's hard for them to transition. But for me, I knew that the next thing I would ultimately love just as much as football. And so I actually started Anthem after my first year in the NFL, not knowing I was going to get picked back up. And the contingency was, look, if I get picked back up, obviously I'm going to go back and play in the NFL. That has a shelf life. Entrepreneurship, you can do to the day you die. Football, you can't. And so if I got picked back up, I'm going to go back and play. And so me and my 2 business partners, we started Anthem Pest Control after my first year, not knowing if I was going to get picked back up. And when I got that call to get picked back up by the Minnesota Vikings, my business partners ran the business the first year that I wasn't there. And so I had this business going. It was very small. It was pennies, but I was fully focused on football. And the more success I had there, the more that it would ultimately help the business anyways, whether it was financial or leadership wise or just having that name. And so I started a business not knowing if football was going to even be there. It ended up being there, and I played for another year. And ultimately, the biggest thing was I hurt my ankle that next year when I was with the Dolphins. And it was a long recovery, like 12 to 14 week recovery, which was the end of the season. And at that point, I was like, look, I'm not even older fruit, but I have this thing that I really love, which is entrepreneurship. And the calls for football stopped coming in as much. So I started just naturally transitioning into what was keeping me busy, which was business. And if an NFL team would have called me back, I still had my body ready and I was still training all the time. But calls came in like far less than the year before. Yeah. And even less than that year before. And so it just sort of was a natural progression to business. And obviously when you're there, you're like, man, I wish I could play for 10 years. Yeah. But you roll with the punches and you see what's next.
That makes sense. Yeah. Got it. What did you study at BYU?
Exercise and wellness.
Okay. So yeah, you mentioned your love for entrepreneurship. Like, when did that seed get planted? Like, why did you like entrepreneurship? Why not take that and go from NFL to a corporate job or do something related to your major?
I don't know. I saw my mom. She had her own fitness business growing up. She was a personal trainer, had a Pilates studio.
Cool.
And I loved that. I loved the freedom she had. But what it was in college. BYU has this weird thing where you get a lot of these uber fans that are also incredibly successful entrepreneurs too, but they're your fans for the moment because you're wearing the jersey, right?
Yeah.
And so like Nick Greer, he's the founder of Built Bar, who everyone loves.
Yep.
And Jeremy Andrews, who's the CEO of Traeger Grills, like they're massive BYU fans. And so they're the guys you can call up anytime and say, yo, let's go get lunch, So like I said before, I didn't go to much college in college. Like I did just enough to stay eligible because I knew I could always go back to college, but football is where I needed to focus. And then in networking. So the amount of classes I skipped, the amount of things I skipped to go have lunch with Jeremy Andrus or Nick Greer at Built Bar, or there's like 30 guys I can name that were the CEO of X company. Mm-hmm. And the lunches, the golf I went and did with them instead of going to class, that was my schooling. And I saw the way those guys lived their lives. I saw what those guys did in business. I saw how they treated their families. And I was able to look at those guys, those CEOs, those mentors and say, okay, I really like this guy's lifestyle. I really like this guy's business. I really like this and like this. And those guys leapfrogged me like 15 years ahead. Maybe I would have just gotten a job if I wouldn't have invested into networking over just, school. Yep. And so that was my school, was eating lunch with successful entrepreneurs and skipping class and then focusing on football. And those are guys that I was texting Jeremy Andrus this morning about going and getting a hike this week. And so that was my school. That's when I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. As I saw those guys, they told me I could do it. They told me, here are the pitfalls, here are the things you should do to have a life just like me. And I'm still very early in that game, but because of those guys, I believe I can do exactly what they do.
I love it, dude. And I think to your point, I feel like at BYU specifically, I don't know, people get caught up in like the book smart side, the classes, the grades, and to your point, those external forces, the exposure to successful people who are, showing you how, from mentorship or what have you, that's really where the education happens. And I mentioned before we started recording like this podcast, right? It's like sitting down with Mitch Mathews or whoever is on here. It's like, getting, and then trying to add value to other people as we're, people are listening to this. It's like, that's where a lot of the true education comes from. And so I love that. What was the first step in getting Anthem off the ground? I guess backing up, why pest control? Like, so you're getting exposure to these different entrepreneurs, CEOs, industries. Mm-hmm. Like, what was it about pest that, led you to want to go down that route to start your journey?
Yeah. So that was really the first opportunity that presented itself. Uh-huh. And it was the first thing I said yes to. I had these two business partners who were very talented that approached me and said, hey, we think you would be fantastic at this. pest control, you're not going to be necessarily passionate about the art of eradicating bugs per se, but what you're going to do is you're going to help find talented young people to come sell at our company. So networking, I'm like, that's me. You're going to lead the charge with our salespeople. I love sales. I love talking to people. I can sell. Great, let's do it. So to me, it was what pest control provided, which was an opportunity to recruit talented people, to motivate, to lead, and to be a good salesperson and be a spokesperson for the company. Done. Like that's what the business was. That's all that pest control is. And that's what it provided for me. So that was the yes I gave, but that was the first thing that presented itself to me. It's not like I sat down and had like 100 options and 100 offers to start a business with guys just waiting to start a business with me. It wasn't that. It was just, here was the first one that presented itself with two guys that I love and trusted. And they were very talented. And I said, I can put my eggs in this basket and I can march forward with you guys and do this. I'll learn what I need to learn along the way. But those things, recruiting, leading, motivating, and selling, I can do that. So let's run it up.
Yeah.
And so I just said yes and said, I'll learn along the way.
Love it, man. So did these guys have prior pest controls?
Door-to-door sales experience,
okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And pest control, both.
Yeah. Okay. And how did you guys, I'm always curious to hear about like the initial founding structure. How did you guys come to an agreement? Like, who, it sounds like you were kind of more the marketing, sales, recruiting side. Mm-hmm. What were their roles and how did you guys like divvy it up initially?
Yeah. So we had an operator that had operated at a big pest control company before. And my other business partner and I were going to be in charge of the marketing, sales, and just recruiting the talent to go sell what we had and keep our ops guy busy. But most people don't know this story. From my mission, I had a buddy that was sort of my mentor there. And this friend owned, at the time, like 30 McDonald's. So a very wealthy guy, was looking into getting into investing. And we knew that if we were going to start this business a month before like the selling season started, we were going to need some capital. So bootstrapping would have been an option if we would have had this idea for the business, months and months before, but we didn't. So it's now March. This is 2017. Our selling season starts a month later.
Yeah.
And so I met my business partner, the operator, over the phone. He lives in Atlanta, Georgia. And it was sort of a, hey man, I really like how this sounds. Let's just run with it. The other business partner knew us both individually. And I said, guys, we're gonna need some capital for this. So I have a guy that is really hungry for investing. Let's all fly out to Las Vegas, which is where he lived. And let's go pitch in this idea. So we all flew to Vegas and met. That was the first time I'd shook my business partner's hand, was there. We had talked over the phone.
Yeah.
And shook his hand and then walked upstairs to, this is Planet Hollywood, to go have dinner with this guy at a steakhouse. And we were able to have a 3-hour meeting and pitch this investor who was a buddy of mine that owned those McDonald's and get I believe it was a $3.3 million over a 3-year investment for our company. And we locked it down. And made it happen. And it's been great ever since. Now there's 3 of us owners and it's been fantastic. And it took every single person involved to be there to make this thing work equally. And that to me was I don't know if that's how things are supposed to go, right? You meet your business partner, then you walk upstairs and get millions of dollars as an investment. But to me, it's just the principle of don't overthink it. Like, if you have an idea, if you have an opportunity, just say yes. If your gut says say yes, and then you'll figure it out along the way. If we would have stopped and waited and had to think about it, that would have been into the selling season. Then we probably honestly would have been like, you know what, let's just wait till next year. Then over those next 8 months, things would have fizzled out. We wouldn't even have started the business. And so to me, I've said yes to things that feel right in my gut, even when they don't feel right in my brain. Because the part of your brain, the neocortex that processes information, facts, dates, and times was probably screaming at me in that moment saying, this doesn't make any sense. Summer's in a month from now. We have to get started. We don't have the money. We don't have the capital, no trucks, no building, no product, no nothing, no brand, anything. How is this going to work? But my gut said, let's freaking do this, man. And that can override the ship that says like, we ain't doing this. That limbic brain, which is also known as your gut, your second brain, says we're going to do this. Let's just rock and roll. And I'm so glad we did, because this has been the last 6 years we've been in business. And I've been involved for 5 of those 6 because I had football that first year. it has been like the school of hard knocks for me, for business, leadership, motivation, selling. And so that's what's given me sort of the green light to do whatever else in the next chapter that I want to do, because I said yes to that opportunity, you know? And so follow your gut, whatever sits right, follow that, do that, even though you might be, the logical part of your brain says absolutely not. Your gut says, hell yeah.
Dude, that's so good. Yeah. Oh man. I mean, we could unpack that for a while, but a pattern we've had on the show, very similar. It's like entrepreneurs, they don't have it all figured out, but they have motivation, and their gut is telling them that something feels right, and they go with it. And so, so good, man. So you guys raised about $3 million. What was that capital utilized for? And maybe walk us through like that first year of getting Anthem off the ground.
First year was an absolute failure. You know, we had like 6 sales reps. They were awesome. But we needed to do an X amount of dollars in revenue to make that original $1.1 million investment. So it was 1.1 each year over 3 years, so like 3.3 million. And we didn't even sell enough to even need that 1.1 million. So we sort of were burning cash. And our investor was a little bit upset, at us, because we pitched this thing that was going to happen that didn't happen. Yeah. But he still believed in the team, and he's very glad that he did it, you know, in hindsight. But that capital went to trucks, it went to product, it went to marketing, it went to all of our gear, branding, everything. And then the next big chunk was the commissions for all the salespeople. Yep. You know? And then second year as well, we needed another 1.1 million because we opened another office and had more sales reps. So the back ends or the commissions were bigger. So the money was used for that, you know? And then now we don't need any more capital because we're making enough to self-fund. Yeah.
How long did it take you guys to get to that point where you're self-sufficient?
4 years.
4 years.
3.5, 4 years.
Yeah. So it was the first summer, did you guys go out to Georgia? That was out. You had a buddy out in Georgia, or your partners out in Georgia. Okay.
Exactly.
And I guess Georgia's a great market. So I opened up a Crumble Cookies out there.
Did you really?
Yeah, in Alpharetta is where
I lived in Johns Creek.
Did you? Okay. Yeah. Dude, that's a great
So you
spot.
have it right now?
We sold it, but yeah, we were the first one in Georgia, right there. And
Good for you, man.
Basically right in between Alpharetta and Johns Creek, right there.
Was it Avalon? Was that the area?
It's mall? near there, just east of it. Yeah. But
it was probably right by me.
Avalon would have been money, but the rent there was insane. Actually, I didn't have any availability at the time either. But anyway, so that's kind of my little Georgia experience. But Georgia's a great market. So you guys are in Georgia. I think you're also in, is it Texas? Or okay, yeah, where are you guys now?
Dallas and Fort Worth.
Okay.
We've split in half there. We're in Houston, Texas. We're in Greenville, South Carolina, which is Greenville, Spartanburg, and then we're in Atlanta, Georgia, is our biggest hub.
Got it. Cool. So yeah, how did it go? First year, little rocky. You guys have grown, become self-sufficient for the first 4 years. So how are you doing now? What's kind of 6 years in? How are you doing now, and what's the next few years look like for you guys? So
this year we're projected to hit the 19 to 20 million mark, which would be huge, really, really huge for us, just from where we came from, which is awesome. Yeah. And so we're at a place now where, the business is making plenty of money for, if we want to have 200 sales reps, we can have that. We don't need any outside capital. We can self-fund, and it's doing very well. And so as you're growing a business, as you're growing, money is tight, Yeah. And that's for, even massive companies. Most people don't know that. They think that, you're doing 500 million in revenue. You must be completely safe. But if you're growing a ton, all that money is going into the growth, right? Yeah. And so we're still a little bit in that mode where we're growing, right? But we're at a place now, we're very stable, very healthy. We built a great brand. People know the name, at least in our sphere. And recruiting has become a lot easier because we're using motivation now. Before it was just all hustle. It was just literally knocking on campus doors, looking for guys that didn't have a job to come out and sell with us. Yeah. And now people hear about us and they're in our DMs, they're in our inbox to come sell with us. And so we're in a great place, and a lot of people love what we're doing and have knocked on our door and said, hey, how do we become a part of this? Yeah. So we're in a great place and we're loving what we're doing, and couldn't be happier.
That's great, man. Yeah. And when you guys open up new branches or offices, I know groups do it differently. Some have, guys go out there who have ownership or kind of like a franchise model. Right. How are you guys structuring your offices? Have you just kept it between you three as partners and your investor?
Exactly.
Or, okay.
Yeah. So that's who owns the whole entire business. But we have an LTIP, or a long-term incentive plan, through for our sales reps.
Okay.
Right. I think every sales rep needs that sort of that LTIP to keep them in for the long term, right? Because no one lives their life thinking they just want to make commissions, then start back new next year. People always want to feel like they're a part of something. And if you can give that equity away in residuals or LTIP or a small piece, people will really feel like it's their brand and they're a part of it and sort of they're a founder of it even. And if you can give your equity away as much as possible, we've done that through residual. So our guys have residual in the accounts they put on. It's 4% residual in all the revenue they put on, but that's revenue, not profit. So it's almost like with 50% margins, it's like 8% of profits that they're taking back for themselves. So by giving away equity to your salespeople, your top guys, it drives loyalty, but it also helps in the quality of our business because they feel like they're owners as well. We've seen that really help keep our top guys around.
Yeah, I love it. And is your role still mostly marketing,
totally,
recruiting?
Yeah.
Have you done the doors? Have you been 100%,
on the doors? 100%.
Yeah. Okay.
100%.
Yeah. You kind of have to, right? To be able to sell it.
So when I was playing football, I remember trying to recruit like via DMs, like just DMing people, like begging my cousins to come out and come sell with us.
Yeah.
And I remember feeling this imposter syndrome.
Sure.
Of like, I hadn't even done this. How can I tell people to come out and do this? And so when football was completely done, this is end of 2017, and I was making this full jump into this job, I said, okay, well, my business partner has done operations for like the last 15 years with other companies. I've done 0 years of sales and recruiting. I need to jump into this and get that real experience. And so my first year at Anthem, I went out and said, okay, how can I make a big splash? And the big splash was doing what's called a golden door, which is selling 1,000 homes in a summertime. And I asked my business partner, I said, has any rookie ever done this before? And I was an older rookie. I was 27 at the time. Mm-hmm. But I said, has any rookie ever done this? He said, no. I said, is it possible? He said, yes. But he's probably just trying to motivate me. And I said, has anyone ever done it in under 5 months? He said, no, the fastest anyone's ever done it is 5.5 months. That was at the time. And I said, done. So I'm going to be the first rookie to ever sell 1,000 homes. And I'm going to be the fastest to ever do it, rookie or not. And that next summer, I went out and sold 1,000 homes in under 5 months time.
Dang.
And which is like the least sexy thing ever in terms of like pest control records, right? But what it did though was establish me as someone who was credible in the industry.
Yeah.
And swallowing my pride of having world's sexiest job to world's least sexy job, I was cool with, because I went from being that undrafted player, to be on the door. So to me, that was like that chip on my shoulder still. I just carry that chip on my shoulder. That football didn't work out exactly how I wanted to. And now every door that I knock on, they're going to feel that chip. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And that gave me a shot to go do that. And I sold a few full-time years after that, just to continue to motivate the guys. And those records have been long broken by now. But that's what I had to do to get sort of a brand name out, but in this specific industry, was put that pride aside and say, I'm going to overcome all that's been going on in my personal life, do something great, even through what's going on in my life, and make a splash.
Good for you, man. Yeah, teach by example, no better way. I love it. So how are you thinking about competition right now? You guys are 6 years in. How many reps did you say you guys have now?
Like 100 sales reps.
100 sales reps. So I mean, and honestly, I don't know how that compares to anyone, but like how are you guys looking at competition, some of the bigger dogs in the space and recruiting? I mean, how does all that play in? Yeah,
I mean, we're still definitely one of the younger guys out here, for sure. I mean, these guys, the big guys, have been around for 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
And now that solar's gotten big, you're competing against not just pest control companies, it's different industries too. Mm-hmm. But there's so much talent out here. If you're doing a good job, people will find you. But we compete. I mean, this is a very competitive industry. Sales is always competitive. But what I found and this is even in sports too, I've been very big on that collaborating and cooperating is more important than competition. Because human beings are always going to compete. You don't need to tell people to compete. They're always just going to compete, right? It's just natural. But what you have to help people remember is that collaborating with people is more important than competition. Because if you're always going to compete, you're not always going to collaborate, meaning what I did to have success in this industry and in selling and breaking those records was I went and found the best guys in this industry to go help teach me how it's done. And they don't get anything from my success. But I met with the top guys at the Vivint. I met with the top guys at the big pest control companies to help teach me how to sell and run a business and start. What should I do? What would you do differently if you were in my shoes? And so I collaborated and networked with so many people to help get us off the ground and just soak up everything I could from these greats. And so we still compete in recruiting meetings. We still compete, out our guys on the doors. And that will always be there.
Yeah.
But I've pushed really big on cooperating and finding the best guys in the industry to learn from, to soak up knowledge from, and just to continue to better myself from. So I collaborate even more than we compete, because it's always going to be there.
Yeah, no, I love that. I'm reading a book right now called The Go Giver, and it talks about just within business, it can be very natural to be competitive, dog eat dog, but it's like if you look to add value, collaborate, try to look into someone else's interest before yours, it always comes back full circle, tenfold typically. So I think you guys you approaching the right way, man. Well, cool. Apart from Anthem, I mean, I know you've got young entrepreneurs, which we'll talk about here, but are there any other like business side things you're doing, or is it kind of all focused right now on building out Anthem?
Yeah, currently that's like the full-time gig.
Yeah.
I have some things in the works that we'll get back on the podcast. We'll divulge in the future.
Dude. Love it.
We'll do a round 2 for sure for some of the things that have coming up. But it's so time consuming. We have almost 100 employees, almost 100 sales reps. You know what I mean? So it's a lot of bodies. That just takes a lot of my time.
Yep.
But it's time that we don't take our foot off the gas, because it's momentum season.
Absolutely.
And so capturing that momentum and not just sleeping on what we've built, but continuing to put our foot down on the ground, pedal to the metal, and move forward is huge for us right now. So that's definitely taking up most of my time. But I'm an entrepreneur. I want to solve problems through business. And Anthem was my first business, and it's taught me so much, but I'm 32. There's so much left for me to do. And I'm going to take the knowledge I've learned here and parlay that into a lot of other things to continue to bless the lives of others. And I want to solve a lot of problems through business. Yeah. And that's sort of my passion, is making the lives of others better on a big scale, and use business as the engine.
Love it, man. Is the end game, maybe you haven't talked about it with your partners, but like, hey, let's build Anthem up and then have an exit, and then, maybe pivot and do something else? Or, because I had, I don't know if you know the Brooks Pest Control guys, Braxton Davies is a really good friend of mine. They built that up, they sold it. Now they're like rinse and repeat, where they're opening another branch. I think they had a non-compete for their region or whatever, but they're just kind of like, let's build it, sell it, build it again, sell it. So I don't know if that's like the mindset for you guys, or if it's like just a long-term cash cow, perpetuity, hold it forever. What's your thought there?
All those models are great, and different companies have different models. And I think it's sort of what comes to you. So what we told ourselves is we're going to build a fantastic business that we don't need to sell. Because if you're in a spot where every year you're just cutting it close, and you're like, oh boy, we have to sell or we could lose the business, you're in a bad place. Because what the macro economy could tell you is, hey, multiples are down right now. But if you have to sell, then you have to sell when multiples are down. So you're just in a bad place. You just pretty much worked the last 5 years for free. Mm-hmm. So we said, we'll grow a little bit slower than some of these companies and build a very robust and healthy business, and not ever have to need to sell. And so if multiples are down, cool, we can just keep going and build this cash cow. But if multiples are up, then people can approach us if they want to. And tons of companies have approached us, tons. The last 3 years they have, asking us to allow ourselves to be bought by them. And we've said no, because this wasn't the right time. So we're building a healthy business to grow and keep. And of course, if someone knocks on our door, we're going to hear anybody out. Yeah. But we're just building a robust, strong, and healthy business.
Love it, man. Well, transitioning from Anthem, we talked about Young Entrepreneurs Club, and you're on social media. I mean, you've got, I think, like the 25, 30,000 followers. Would love to hear, about some of your like engagement, just like influential stuff that you're doing with young entrepreneurs, your social media, kind of the goal you have in inspiring other people through that content.
Yeah. So my full-time job on paper is this pest control business that I have, right? But that job is really split 50-50 with networking. That's like my full-time job. It seriously is. I swear, half my day trying to get in front of just the right people. I'm very big on authentically networking with people. And I think for me, that's everything. For what I want to do, which is impacting millions and millions of people through business, I'm going to have to know a lot of people. I can't be a solopreneur, at least in my world. I can't be. And so I work on, and I do network like crazy. And it's all authentic. I'm not just going to meet with this person just because they have more followers and maybe they can gas me up and I get more followers. That's not what it is.
Yeah.
It's finding those authentic relationships that I'm going to have forever, And that really is it. There's 1A, which is Anthem, and there's 1B, which is networking with the right people.
Yeah.
Because at some point I'm going to need to call on those people that have become friends through networking. And they're going to have to help me with my business in a big way, or I'm going to have to hire them, or we're going to have to collab in some way. So that is my full-time thing. And so where Young Entrepreneurs Club was born was, I was so glad I had mentors in the early stages of my business. And I wanted to build something for the next generation of entrepreneurs who want to change the world through business. And what I can do for them is, through all the work I've put in networking, I can have those guys, my now friends, come speak to 30, 40, 50, even 80 people, every other Monday of the month, and educate myself and all these people that are part of this club. And just to give back, we don't charge anything yet. We're gonna start with some more intensive training that people will pay for. But for now, it's just it's a way to give back and to use these great friends that have had these big exits to come and speak to and mentor our guys. And then, of course, I learned so much along the way.
Love it, man. Yeah, I love it. What's one piece of advice you'd give on networking? Like if you're reaching out to somebody who's, busy, successful, like what are you doing to get in front of folks who you think would be good to talk to?
Yeah. It's got to be authentic.
Yeah.
I think people get caught up in not vetting out people. They open up their Instagram, they see this person has 100,000 followers. They have no idea if they're even real or not. But they just see, oh my gosh, this guy's got a Lambo. He's got a G-Wagon. His post looks like he's successful. He's got all these followers. I got to meet this guy.
Yeah.
I got to get a picture with this guy.
Yeah.
And it's all fake. It is. I would say get really good at sniffing out the fake ones versus the real ones. You're going to have to, if you're going to be successful, you got to sniff out the fake interviewee versus the real one. You're going to have to sniff out the fake business partner versus the real one. So grow out that sniffing out muscle of fake versus real. You're really good at that. And so I try to authentically network. And I talk about this all the time. It's finding people who you should be talking to and meeting with, because you can provide value for them as well. If I want to meet somebody just because they're successful, they're going to know that. And they're going to know that I'm just suckling at the teat.
Yeah.
Right? It's going to go nowhere. And they're not going to even want to divulge all this information for me because they know that I'm just there to just get from them. Well, what's a way that I can provide for them as well? And I'll give you a story. So 4 years ago, I was listening to a podcast with Lewis Howes. I owe my wife all the credit for this because she's the one that made me listen to it. She's like, Mitch, you need to listen to this podcast by a guy named Lewis Howes. He's a big podcaster. And the reason why she said I needed to listen to this was because she's like, your story and his story match up oddly. Sorry, let me say this again. She's like, Mitch, you need to listen to this podcast because your guys' stories match up oddly similar. So I listened to it, and like 6 or 7 times, I'm like, dang, you had like the same injury in football to losing a parent to having the same values and this. I got to meet this guy because him and I could connect on a deep level. People always wanted deep connections. So I hit this guy up, hit Lewis Howes up, and he heard my story. And he's like, wow, that's insane. I've never met somebody who has a story just like mine. And so I was able to fly out to California and meet him. And what was supposed to be a 30-minute workout together just to meet turned into us hanging out for 4 hours. And then that night invited me to go out to Poland with him a couple months later to meet Wim Hof and stay at Wim Hof's house and learn all this crazy breath work and cold bath therapy stuff because it was authentic. That's why it worked out. I didn't want to meet with Lewis because I wanted to talk about like why he's so successful and because he could give something to me. It was because I wanted friends that had gone through similar stuff, had walked through the same fires I had. And we became instant friends, and we're still friends this day, close. Yeah. And authentically networking is the key. Finding people who you can provide value for as well, and finding people who you know you'd click with, not just because someone has a G-Wagon that you want or has 100,000 followers, real or not, that you might want as well. That's all fake. Yep. And so it's sniffing out the fake and the real and growing that muscle, because that'll be huge for the rest of your life. That's emotional intelligence. Yep. Love it, man. Just, again, try and do add before you take, add value and do it authentically. And one thing, I heard this from a mentor growing up, people like to use the phrase picking someone's brain, right? And like, I feel like that is the absolute wrong way to approach like networking or even taking someone to lunch or whatever. It's like, nobody wants to have, I mean, just imagine that, like picking someone's brain, like the visual of that. It's like, if you're just networking for the fact of just taking, right? Like I just want to, get things from you and not, it just like you said, if you can try to be authentic, add value, be, true to the purpose there, it goes so much further. Well, love it, dude. A couple other questions. We'll wrap it up, Mitch. Want to talk quickly about habits. I've heard you talk about some things that you do on a daily or weekly basis, but like top 10 or rituals. But yeah, what are some things you're doing in your life to try to stay grounded and keep your vision strong? It's very good. There are a lot of people that would probably be better to interview about habits than me that just have like dialed in like 5:30 in the morning thing going on. Yeah. But I have my non-negotiables, which fitness the first thing in the morning, which is reading, and then top 10 has been really big for me as well. So it's writing down my top 10 2023 goals and then my top 10 life goals as well. Not only does it put it on top of mind, but it really is just manifesting it. When you tell yourself that you're confident, you'll become confident, Yep. When you tell yourself you're going to hit this goal, you're just more likely to hit it, right? And so if I'm working as hard every day, I might as well add in all the things in my day that are going to give me the best chance to hit that goal. If I'm already working hard for it, let me just add in the mental side of it, which is manifesting that it's going to happen. That's also that top 10 yearly and life goals is sort of your compass to remember that you shouldn't be saying yes to things that are going to make you deviate from those things. And so I'm big on manifesting, massive on the self-talk, telling myself I can do things that I probably have no business doing, but telling myself that I can get there all day long. My wife catches me talking to myself all day long. But I got to be my own therapist. I got to be my own coach. I got to be my own mentor. I got to be my own parent. I got to be my own coach. That coach that used to plant things in my mind that allowed me to think big. That's me now, because I'm with myself 24/7. I'm not always with that coach. I'm not always with that person that's helped me think big. That's on my shoulders now. And so the more often I can help myself think big, the more likely that work that I'm already putting in the day is going to give me a chance to make that happen. And so very, very huge on those things, on manifesting. Now I got to get to the right people too, because the right people are going to help me think even bigger and help me avoid the pitfalls so I don't get stopped in the middle of my tracks on my way to accomplishing those top 10 goals. And so that's why networking is so big for me as well. And so in terms of habits, that's what I stick to, is those main big points, which is I'm meeting a lot of new people every single week, and it's on my calendar. It's deliberate. I have a checklist of people that I want to meet that are authentic to my situation and I am to theirs. And my top 10, I write it down all the time so I can have a refreshed view every morning of who I'm going to become. And then my daily calendar is the speed at which I even have a chance to get there or not, Yeah. And that's what I've stuck to, and it's worked. Love it, man. And not to get too deep on it, but your top 10, are those, I guess, what's like one or two examples of like, this is what I want to accomplish this year? And are you
because everyone has a different way to set goals. Like, you got to have SMART goals that are, timely and whatever. But like, are they more like, hey, I want to do this, but maybe it's not time defined, or it's not super analytical in terms of like, this is step 1, 2, 3, 4. Is it like higher level goals, or what's an example of things that you're writing down on a daily basis to get that in your mind?
How I write my goals down is I write them in the past tense, because everything's accomplished twice in life. First in your mind, then in reality. So I write down my goals in past tense. So I write, I became the entrepreneur of the year in Utah by age 39. I write it down like it already happened, because if it happened in my mind daily, meaning I became, when I write it down, then when it actually does happen, it won't be a surprise. When Michael Phelps was on the podium getting all those gold medals, he wasn't shocked. Those things have happened in his mind years in advance. And so if I can accomplish things by writing it down in the past tense like it's already happened in my mind, I'm halfway there. Now the work I'm already putting in is going to make sure it actually happens in reality. That's one of my goals, is to become the entrepreneur of the year in Utah by the time I'm 39. I've written that down for years.
Love it.
It's really what I want to become. And I learned that to even think that way. I didn't even know that was a thing until I met Jeremy Andrus, the CEO of Traeger, who became that, I believe, when he was about that age,
Yeah.
And so because I networked, met those people, they helped me think that those things were even possible. Now that I met them, now that I know it's possible for someone that age to do that, now I write it down all the time like it's already happened. It happened in my mind first, it's already done. Now I just need to make sure it happens in reality.
So good, man. Well, last couple things, just in terms of advice you'd give for somebody who wants to start a business. I mean, you've obviously been through a lot with Anthem, as you guys have gotten that off the ground, but when you're thinking about starting a company, taking that leap to entrepreneurship, like what's kind of the foundational thing you'd share with somebody?
Yeah. If I was, if someone came to me and said, I want to start a business, what should I do? Which actually happens quite frequently.
Yeah, I bet.
I would say find something where you won't get tired of it in 10 years. And what that typically is something that bugs you. Man, it really bugs me that we don't have clean enough water to drink out here. It really bugs me, and it always has. This is an example. This isn't my thing. But it really bugs me that we don't have clean enough drinking water. So I would start a business on how to provide people with clean drinking water. Because 5 years from now, it's going to still bug you that there's not clean enough drinking water. And that getting bugged feeling will propel you to do a lot of really cool things, to make the sales you need to make, to go bigger. And so find what bugs you and then go do that thing, solve that thing, because you won't get tired of it, Yeah. You hear a lot of entrepreneurs get tired of what they do. It's because what they do or the problem they solve never really bothered them in the first place. They were just doing it for money. And they realized, man, I could have gone a lot longer. I could have gone a lot farther, but it stopped really bugging me about solving the problem, because there wasn't a problem I was even solving. It was just to gain money for me. And you sort of end that when you get a good amount of money. But the people that find businesses where something bugged them and they said, I want to go solve that, those people go forever. Because it goes back to that quote, people walk farther if they love to walk than if they just love the destination, right? And so if you just saw someone be successful in something and make a big bag, right? And you say, I want to go do that because I saw what they could make. Well, you're just seeing the destination. You didn't see the walk they had to take, right? You might not even love what they do, but they do. You're just seeing the destination. So first start with, man, what bugs me? And I'm going to go solve that problem, because then you'll love that walk and you'll walk forever to solve that problem. And then you realize once you have solved that problem in a way or in your community, you've made a ton of money and you've helped a lot of people.
Yeah, I love it, man. Business is all about solving problems. And if you happen to get paid along the way, only the better, right? So love it, man. Last question, Mitch. I ask my guests this quite often, but when you think about, backing up life in general, looking at the bigger picture and talking about success, when you think about, the spectrum of success, I guess, how does Mitch Mathews define a life well lived, successful life?
It's a great question. I would say I've been given a lot, and so I have to give a lot too. And so it would be a shame for at least me personally just to make a lot of money and have that myself, because I feel like I've been given tools to bless a lot of people and help a lot of people on the way. And so when I leave this earth, whenever it is, I feel like I would be very proud of myself if I impacted a ton of people. Some people do that through speaking, some people it's philanthropy, some people it's service. My way to impact a lot of people is through business. So I can accomplish a lot of personal goals, but more importantly, through business, I can help a lot of people. And so what success is to me is having served and helped a ton of people and become exactly who I said that I would become, so that people can have sort of a blueprint of someone they can follow. Because there's going to be more people like me, way more talented, 10, 20, 30 years from now. I hope to have created an amazing blueprint for people to solve problems through business and impact a lot of people. And so growing that serving muscle, that giving muscle now has been a big thing for me. Because when I started to have a lot of success in football and financially now, you sort of feel like this little bit of guilt if it's all just for you, if you're sort of the only one winning. Obviously, my employees, my sales reps, they're winning great as well. But there's even more than just that. It goes beyond just your company. It goes to your networks and your community. How can I help them win as well? And so Casey Boss helped me a ton with this, just listening to him and Todd Peterson. It's growing that giving muscle now. And so my wife and I, we've worked on just whether it's just little micro ways to just give people help, whether it's time or money, to grow that now, so that when financially we have an even bigger platform to give. We've already been giving, and as I've given more. When it was football, I just had time to give. When I gave that time away, it increased my capacity to play better so I could give even more. So when I went and visited that sick kid or made that phone call to that person who needed help, it was impactful. And now the same thing applies, but financially. When I'm giving now in those small ways, I can't wait for that time when financially things get even bigger and bigger and bigger, that I have that big opportunity to give. And I hope that I don't pass that opportunity up because I've been growing my giving muscle now, because that's just going to increase my capacity. And so when you're just making money for yourself, you sort of get tired of that, right? You do when you feel like you have enough. But when you're giving a lot of it away, or as much as you feel comfortable to give away, you realize how much more you want to make and how much better you want to do, because it just gives you a platform to continue to give, whether time or money. And so I'll feel successful. I already do, but I'll feel successful. The more I give, the more I bless others, and the better blueprint I create for others to follow, and then be a damn good dad and a damn good husband.
Love it. No better way to end. I appreciate you giving up some of your time today to do this podcast.
Easy. It was easy.
Share your knowledge, man.
We'll do it again.
Yeah, love it. Thanks so much for being here, Mitch.
Yeah, it was a blast.